Hi there, everybody. This is Carrie Hamblen, the CEO and president of the Las Cruces Green Chamber of Commerce, coming to you again. This time I'm in my office today on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I'm here with Andrea Dresser, who is the owner of Counseling Las Cruces. She is also a marriage and family therapist and a certified sex therapist. She has been a member of the Las Cruces Green Chamber of Commerce, I think ever since you started, since you opened your business. I think you've been a member of the Green Chamber. So it's so lovely to see your face. I mean, I've been able to see you in person, so I've had that luxury. But
Thank
in our
you.
Zoom chats, I get to see you in your office. So how are you doing today, Andrea?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm so glad you're here too. You know, this whole month we've been spotlighting counseling agencies because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's really important. You know, I think for all of us, I think you know, I don't know if there's statistics. You may know this or not, but I think all of us know somebody who is dealing with some form of a mental illness, and
That's
yet still to this day, it is still very much a stigma for people who are dealing with that and being ashamed to talk about it, and yet it's something that is makes them who they are. And so, so we're going to talk about that. But first and foremost, what I've always been asking all of you, because telehealth has really become kind of a part of how folks like you are doing business. So, how did the
right.
pandemic affect you? Because you've got quite a bit of therapists under your roof and under your umbrella. But how did the pandemic affect you as you and your therapist? And then how did it affect your clients?
Oh, well, initially, the pandemic affected us by the phone stopped ringing for the first month. And then all of a sudden, we were inundated with calls for couples therapy and children's therapy. And so we got really busy, really, really busy. And of course, we had to shift to telehealth. And my therapists, some of them were resistant initially, as were clients were uncomfortable with it. But now it's great. And most of my therapists work from home still. So
Yeah.
it's convenient, and it's convenient not only for them, but for the clients as well.
Well, just the access. I mean, we can talk about the broader conversation of, broadband inequality and people not having access, but grateful for the folks who do. Um, because it's nice to sit in your jammies and talk to your therapist instead of having to get dressed and go outside.
Right, right.
Yeah. And so do you think that, I mean, are you going to continue with telehealth? Is that going to become like part of your
As,
regular practice?
as long as insurance covers it, because we're an insurance-based practice, yes, we will continue it as long as we get paid.
I mean, I'm glad, and I hope that they do. I think, for many of us, we're finding that the new normal is kind of different. It's, we have to start. The pandemic brought out a lot of things where there are inequities and a lot of things that, business owners and employers could do that they didn't think they could do before. And then they were kind of forced to do. And now they're like, hey, that's a great idea.
Well, what's been great is we can expand our service range to anyone in the state because of telehealth. So now we have more clients that are in more remote areas where they may not have access to care.
And
So,
transportation and all of that
right,
stuff. So that's
right.
fantastic. That is fantastic. And so, when we talk about this, I was just talking with somebody a little while ago about how a young person was asking me about mental health, and they disclosed that they, as a 15-year-old, deal with bipolar disorder and worried about applying for a job, and if they had an episode, how they would get fired from their job. And so these are legitimate concerns across the age spectrum.
Sure.
And yet this young person, was really apprehensive about talking about that. And we still have this stigma. Why do you think there is this stigma of mental health? I mean, there might be some historical elements as to why that happens, but why
Well,
do you think?
it's a good question. It's because I think we've come from a society that judges you if you're not looking a certain way, behaving a certain way. I just think it's a judgment that has been carried on. But thank goodness there's more visibility, not just because of it being May, but by virtue of the fact we have more high profile people saying they're struggling with mental health, such as Olympic stars and Naomi Judd and,
Right, right.
sad. Yeah. But I think more people there's more visibility about mental health being a thing, and anyone can suffer.
Well, with that, maybe this is something that you can help with, is that, when somebody discloses that they are dealing with a mental illness, I mean, I've learned that there are things that you say and there are things that you don't say, because, if somebody's having a bad day and the fact that they're out of bed is a big deal. You don't say, oh, but look at all the great things that are happening in your life. That's a dumb thing to say to somebody who's having a hard day.
Yeah.
So you don't, so like, what are some of the things that folks can do to be supportive when somebody discloses that they're battling a mental illness in whatever capacity it is?
I think the first thing you can do is listen and be supportive without passing judgment, and assure that person that you care and you're there for them, and have that be sincere. I just think listening and being heard, the person struggling being heard, is a big deal. And I think that's what happens in the therapeutic relationship. Someone, their voice is heard.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful.
And in the therapeutic environment, it's really, and I think this is what's really, one of the things that you touch on is, making sure that you listen, but also don't offer advice unless you're asked for it.
Well, that's right.
Yeah, because we have a tendency of doing that. And so, but I think, with the therapeutic environment, it's really, because it's like this bubble of safety, right?
Yeah, ideally it is. Sometimes people have the experience where the therapist isn't a good fit for them, and that can be damaging.
What do you think are questions? Because that's one thing, because especially if you don't click with your therapist, but the thing that people need to understand is that when you are shopping around for a therapist, you have every right to continue going and looking for a therapist that fits you if the first or the second or the third one doesn't. The challenge is getting through that first, second, and third one and still having the energy and the desire, because after a while you're just like, oh, this isn't worth it, but it is worth it.
It is worth it. You have to tell your story over and over, and that's frustrating and that's discouraging for people. And I don't, most people don't have the experience where they're going through 2 or 3, 3 or 4 therapists. Usually within the first few, you can find somebody. But it's important to ask questions, find out what the therapist style is. And, most therapists should be open to being interviewed. So, and that's not a typical thing. I know here we offer a free 15-minute consultation if the person requests it. So you can get a sense of the therapist, and the therapist can get a sense of the person.
And then, that's where you can actually have a very honest conversation of, what, I think this will work, or I think actually there might be a different colleague that might be better suited to your needs.
Exactly.
And that's where those opportunities come into play. And given that you have, how many employees do you have underneath your?
I have 30 therapists.
So you've got a wide variety.
Yeah, yes, I do. And everyone has kind of different specialties. A lot of people are trained in trauma. We can, do work with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorders, eating disorders, self-esteem issues. I mean, it kind of runs the gamut, addiction. So we have somebody for everybody, I think.
That's good.
No, I was going to say, and 5 of those therapists are up in Santa Fe. I have an office there as well.
And so that's awesome, because then that gives you coverage of, in between both areas of the state.
Right.
When somebody is looking for a therapist, what are some of the questions that, I mean, I know it's certainly specific to whatever the needs are of the patient, but can you kind of share with me like what you think are some of the good questions to ask to find out whether or not that therapist is good for you?
I would ask the therapist what style or what kind of interventions do they use? Are they like cognitive behavioral or another methodology? But that may not mean anything to the client. Right. So I think just having a conversation, just getting a sense of what that person is like. As a therapist, I might ask, please tell me what's going on with you right now. What brings you into therapy? And from that conversation, get a sense of if I would be a good fit for them or not, depending on what their issues are.
Right. I can offer up for me, being uh, incredibly grateful for therapy. 3 different therapists in my lifetime for 3 different types of issues. Um, making sure that people were comfortable and supportive of LGBTQ people as an out lesbian. So wanting to make sure that. Also, like being really specific about why I was seeking the help.
Mhm.
I'm an adult child of an alcoholic, so codependency is like I am textbook. I am great at it, and so being able to have those conversations about those tools and skills that I would need so that I wouldn't get into unhealthy relationships because of just my trauma and my upbringing. So I think it's like really important to find out like what your concerns are, what your sensitivities are, and what the purpose is as to why you're seeking therapy. That kind of like helps narrow it down, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
And so with that, what do you, I think that for some folks, like I've certainly said that it was the hardest work and the most gratifying work that I've ever done in my life, is go through therapy because you learn a lot about yourself. Some things
Right.
you don't want to learn, but you have to in order to move forward. Um, but with this, if somebody is struggling to find or even to start that journey of therapy, what do you recommend for somebody who would probably benefit a great deal from therapy, but then may not be there yet?
You have to be ready and wanting it. You can't force somebody. You
Right.
can always, I'd advise someone to ask a trusted friend if they know of anybody that they've liked, that they've worked with, to start finding a referral or a reference. But it doesn't work until you're ready to do the work.
Yeah. And then with that, I mean, it does take, sometimes people think, okay, I can go in for a couple sessions and I'll be good.
Right.
Sometimes that's the case. My most recent reason was, maybe I think 6 months, and then I got the tools for my toolbox for
Mhm.
what I needed, and I feel really lucky that it's always there if I need it. But
Right.
sometimes sometimes there's work that takes a little bit longer, and
That's correct.
it needs to be followed through if you want to get to where you need to be. And so with you, what do you feel is like kind of the most gratifying thing for you as a therapist, especially given that we've had, really the last 2 years have been really challenging for both people who are providing the therapy and people who are seeking the therapy. So first and foremost, how do you able to balance that as somebody who is providing those tools? And then, how would you recommend that for other folks to be able to center and find peace?
It's interesting. The first question you asked was about what maybe I get out of it. And I feel like it is such a privilege and an honor to be led into somebody's inside world. I really cherish that. It's a total privilege. And I'm kind of spacing on what you just asked me. You asked me two other things.
No,
So,
no, it's quite all right because it's kind of when we're recording this. This is kind of late in the afternoon, so we're both probably toward the end of our day of functioning, and so how do you as somebody, because it's always good to have. I mean, I think a lot of therapists have their own therapist just because there's so much that you're carrying on your
yes.
shoulders to help, and so how do you provide opportunities for you to find peace? Some
Oh,
people meditate, some people do yard work, whatever. Because that's really helpful for your mental health, is to find that safe space for you to just decompress and do what you need to do. So how do you do that?
well, there's a few things. The first thing that comes to mind is creating balance in my life. So I make sure I get exercise because that seems to work for me. But the other thing is, I'm not a workaholic, but I work a lot and I continue my learning. And that really motivates me and invigorates me. Like I just came back from a 4-day conference on group practice, therapeutic group practice. And so that's a big boost and a shot in the arm and makes me like, let's go forward, let's go forward. And so, and I
Well,
get satisfaction from working with my clients, tremendous satisfaction.
Is like the best day for you as a therapist when you graduate one of your clients?
Oh, that's big. Yeah. When someone is ready, they're ready to move into the next chapter of their life without me. That's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. I think that graduation, or some people say I got fired from my therapist. They can't. They're done. They're done with me, and I have to go on my own now, which is terrifying for some people. But also, it's also like it's a big deal when you move on to that part. I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing, Andrea, because I've seen throughout the pandemic, so many folks really need those tools and just kind of that validation and that supportive ear to kind of hear what they're going through. And I'm glad for therapists like you and the 30 plus folks that you have underneath your roof all over the state.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And so if you're, as we're talking about Mental Health Awareness Month, if you are somebody who would like to seek, trying to get to find the therapist that's right for you, we've been showing videos throughout the entire month of different therapists that are members of the Las Cruces Green Chamber of Commerce. And if you'd like to know more about Counseling Las Cruces and the opportunities for you to talk to Andrea or one of her colleagues, you can find that information either above or below, all depending on how you're looking at it. And you'll be able to contact her and reach out to her office to go ahead and schedule an appointment or even a free 15-minute consultation to see if they're right for you. And so, Andrea, I'm really glad that you provide that as well, because that sometimes is just like, oh gosh, I'm going to have to pay to find out. I'm going to have to pay to interview my therapist.
No.
No, not at all. So I'm grateful that you offer that as well, and I'm grateful
Thank
for all that you do for everybody that that we have in our community and in our state. And if you'd like to schedule a Zoom chat to talk about your business, these are part of your member benefits in the Las Cruces Green Chamber of Commerce. They're super easy and they're super fun and comfortable. I would say, Andrea, that was pretty easy for us today.
Yes.
So good job. Woo-hoo! And I will see you soon, and I'll have your contact information here. And for everybody else, hope you have a good week. And we'll see you at one of our upcoming events. Bye, Andrea. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.